After the company went bankrupt, in order not to drag me down, my husband came up with a divorce agreement. After I left home, I happened to meet my husband traveling with his mistress and son. It turned out that the clown turned out to be me. I looked at the 2 billion jackpot in my hand and screamed with excitement. Cheating scumbag, give me death. Victor knelt in front of me and cried, "Wife, the company is bankrupt and has hundreds of millions of debts." Afraid that I wouldn't believe it, he stuffed me with a stack of papers. I looked dizzy. At the top is the court's bankruptcy determination document, the bright red official seal, which is particularly eye-catching, and at the bottom is the bankruptcy liquidation application, the company's settlement list, the company's balance sheet, and the loan contract. A thick stack. My head went blank. Victor continued, "Wife, in order not to implicate you, let's divorce." After saying that, he handed me another divorce agreement. In the lower right corner, the words "Dragon Flying" and "Phoenix Dance" are written, which is his name. I trembled and signed my name. Victor hugged me and said, "Honey, this house will be auctioned soon, I have nothing." I looked at the house where I had lived for 10 years, my eyes were sore, I held back my tears, and asked, "What about my son?" Victor wiped away a handful of tears and said, "We can't suffer our son if we suffer. I will use the last bit of money on the account to send my son to study abroad." I nodded, thinking about how thoughtful Victor was. After the divorce certificate came down, Victor was busy with the company's liquidation and his son's study abroad. I squeezed my bank card, looked at the lottery station opposite, and decided to bet big. I used the last 5,000 yuan to buy all the lottery tickets. Luckily, I won the bet. I won 2 billion. I jumped up with joy and couldn't wait to share this great news with Victor, and when I dialed his phone, it said it was off. Only then did I remember that today seemed to be the day he sent his son abroad to study, and now it should be on the plane. I want to use this windfall to help my husband pay off his debts so that our family of 3 can be together again. I thought of a senior with whom I had a good relationship in college. He was a partner of one of the best accounting firms in China, and he was an expert in the bankruptcy liquidation of the company. I want to ask him if using this money to pay off debts is the best solution. He told me that he was on vacation abroad. The situation was urgent, and I decided to fly abroad to interview him in person. After getting off the plane, I went straight to the famous resort hotel. When I was looking for my senior in my sunglasses, I accidentally saw Victor. He was wearing big pants, holding a camera, and taking pictures. Following his gaze, I saw a woman in a peach-colored bikini, holding a boy and scratching her head in front of the camera. That boy was none other than my son Jason. I felt dizzy and suspected that I was dazzled by the sun. I took out my phone and called Victor. In the distance, he clamped the camera under his armpit, took out his phone from his trouser pocket, looked at it with a frown, pressed it off, and stuffed the phone back into his trouser pocket. At the same time, the phone in my hand also stopped dialing. I kept calling. This time, he took it. He walked to a place where there were few people with his mobile phone and covered the receiver with his hand. "What's the matter?" The tone was full of impatience. "Oh, it's nothing. I want to ask you, have you been to country A? Is my son's school arranged?" "It's all arranged, we're resting." "Oh." Silent. 3 seconds later, Victor spoke, nothing to hang up beforehand. "Okay. When you come back, I have a surprise to tell you." Victor hummed casually and hung up the phone. I stared at the happy family of 3 in the distance, my hands clenched into fists. I couldn't feel the pain even if my nails were pinched into the flesh, and the corners of my mouth slowly curled up a sneer. I took out my phone and took a few satisfactory photos, as well as videos. After meeting the senior, my first words were, "Senior, I remember that the company you worked for had a fake bankruptcy and was finally discovered, right?" There was a trace of doubt on the senior's handsome face, and I didn't wait for him to speak, and continued, "I have a piece of information here. Please help me take a look. Paid labor, you can pay the price." With just one look, the senior found a problem. How can a building materials company with only 30 people lose so much? This data is not normal. The senior looked at the information carefully, and then said, "This Whitmore Capital Group, which has the most frequent business dealings with Victor, I just searched on the enterprise investigation. This company was established half a year ago." The senior glanced at me, and I understood what he meant in seconds. "You mean, a shell company?" The senior raised his eyebrows and smiled, nodding. "Julia, what's wrong with you and Victor?" The senior asked worriedly. "Victor and I are college classmates, from school uniforms to wedding dresses. We used to be the envy of many people as a campus couple. It's only been more than 10 years, and everything has changed. Not only did he cheat and let me get out of the house, but also my son, whom I had raised for more than 10 years, was also a white-eyed wolf, helping his father to deceive me, which made me feel chilled." I took a deep breath and pretended to be relaxed. "Senior, I want to fight a tough battle. Do you have a reliable lawyer to introduce you, and you can open the price? Where did you get rich?" Such a big breath. I stretched out a finger and shook it in front of my senior. Although the senior was inexplicable, he still took out his mobile phone to help me find someone. On the same day, I flew back to China to meet with a lawyer to discuss countermeasures. At 2 a.m., I tossed and turned, looking at the photos taken on the beach in a daze. Everyone who betrays their family deserves to die. Hatred burned in my heart, and I thought of that woman's beautiful appearance and young body. I opened the social app and wanted to find the woman's social account in the form of a picture search. Today's young people have a characteristic, that is, they love to show life, show affection, and show everything. As expected, I found an account with the screen name, Vicara Queen. An hour ago, she published a news. In the 9-square grid photo, she is wearing a swimsuit and posing on the beach. Although the people in the two group photos are coded, I still recognize them as Victor and Jason. I saved the photo to my phone. Continuing to scroll down, this woman didn't disappoint me, and sure enough, Victor hooked up with her 1 year ago. I have saved all this evidence one by one. A revenge plan is also brewing in his heart. When Victor returned with his son and lover, I had already moved upstairs to his house. I stood at the door with a bag of moldy fruit. The three of them were originally talking and laughing, but when they saw me, they froze. Mom, are you? Why are you here?" I looked at my eldest son with a smile and asked, "Mom still wants to ask you, why are you here?" I. The son was young after all, and turned to look at his good father. Victor's face was full of sadness, and his tone was sincere. "Julia, I'm sorry, I lied to you. In fact, I didn't arrange a foreign school for Jason. I had no money for a long time, and I didn't want you to worry, so I made this decision." I sneered, looked at the woman in a crop top and miniskirt next to me, and asked, "Who is this?" "Oh, that's what I told you, this is the buyer. Yes, the house was sold to her, and I brought her to transfer today." I laughed. Victor, you lied to me about divorce because of this woman, right? You really worked hard to divorce me." As soon as these words came out, Victor's expression changed, and he wanted to quibble. I threw the photo directly in front of them, and then clicked on the video. A delicate voice came from the video, calling husband intimately. The woman didn't pretend anymore, walked up to me arrogantly, and raised her chin. "Julia, you are out, your husband, and this big flat floor are all mine now." Snap. I slapped her directly, and thin red marks immediately appeared on her fair face. The woman screamed and pounced on me. "You dare to hit me." But before she could get close to me, she was grabbed by Victor. "Julia, this slap, we've cleared it for both. You go. Oh, by the way, this is for you." I handed over the bag of fruit and continued, "Recently, our house is going to be renovated, which may disturb you. We are all neighbors, and we will coexist peacefully in the future." A few people stared wide-eyed and didn't understand what I meant. I turned around and walked towards the elevator, and when I passed Jason, I stopped and asked him, "I'm willing to give you a chance, can you leave?" He shrank back and shook his head gently. "Very good. At 8 o'clock the next morning, the decoration company I had made an appointment came, and I asked the master to turn on the drill directly, smashing the wall and drilling holes. The master was enthusiastic and opened 3 electric drills at the same time in order to meet the construction deadline. Feeling the roof shaking, I went out happily. When I got a call from Victor, I was doing a SPA. In the quiet clubhouse, Victor yelled, "Julia, it turns out to be really you, what the hell are you doing?" "Victor, let me remind you that if you shout at me again, I will sue you for harassment. Can you let the decoration workers leave first? Early in the morning, we don't sleep." "No. You. Even if you hate me, you shouldn't be so immoral, right?" "Victor, let me remind you again that my decoration is reasonable and legal, and if you have any problems, you can find the property and the police." Victor was stunned and suddenly said, "Did you really buy that house?" "So what? Where did you get the money?" "It's none of your business." After hanging up the phone, I closed my eyes and continued to enjoy the stretching of my body. After a while, my phone rang again. An unfamiliar voice said, "Miss Julia, we are the police, someone has accused you of disturbing the people, please come back." When I arrived home, a crowd gathered at the door, with 2 uniformed police officers in the middle. Seeing me come back, people around me accused me. Early in the morning, I was so arguing that my heart attack was about to recur. It's just that a good weekend, I was in a good mood by her. "We are all migrant workers, it's rare to sleep in on the weekend, but you're good, you woke me up with an electric drill." In the crowd, Victor and his lover put their hands on their chests and looked at me proudly. "Comrade Police, my decoration is reasonable and legal, the Housing Management Bureau has filed it, and the property has also said hello. Then you should also pay attention, they are pregnant women." "I'm really sorry," I apologized to him personally. The comrade police officer stretched out his hand and pointed at Victor and his lover. The moment I saw them, my tears fell. "Comrade Police, if it were them, then I can't apologize." Hearing my words, the people around them looked at Victor and the 2 of them knew that there was a story between us, and they stretched their necks to look at it. "Do you know them?" "Not only do I know each other, the man is my ex-husband, and the woman is his mistress. We had only been divorced for a month, and he couldn't wait to bring this woman home and kick me out." I burst into tears, and the people around me were basically women, pointing at the 2 of them, and I suddenly stood on the commanding heights of morality. When the woman heard others scolding her, she jumped out and pointed at me and scolded, "You can't keep your husband, who is to blame? You don't look at yourself, you are old and yellow, and you have a strong desire to control, which man can stand your interrogation every day, just like a prisoner?" I lowered my head and sobbed, my shoulders shaking violently, and seeing that the woman's fingers were about to poke my nose, I turned around and hid behind the police. The police comrades couldn't stand it anymore and came out to maintain order. Okay, don't occupy public resources for your own family affairs, let's go back and deal with it ourselves. This lesbian, you are at fault first, so let's stop for a while." I snickered and looked at her face as ugly as eating. The next day, the renovation continued. Early in the morning, Victor took his mistress and son out to stay in a hotel. I watched them drag their suitcases and drove away, then pulled out their phone and called attorney Ryan. "How was that?" After hearing the accurate answer, I smiled happily. "Victor, soon, we'll be meeting each other." 2 days later, Victor called me angrily. "Julia, how dare you sue me? Remember to be on time. I don't like it when someone else is late, you know." "Julia, you bitch." Victor gritted his teeth and said. I hung up the phone. This is just the beginning. A week later, Victor came to court as promised. As soon as he saw me, he glared at me viciously, and the woman next to him, her lover named Kara, snorted at me. "Your Honor, my husband Victor, during the life of our marriage, cheated on Kara, transferred a total of 200,000 yuan, bought luxury bags, jewelry, clothing, etc. for a total of 500,000 yuan, and..." Before I could finish speaking, Kara couldn't wait to prove herself. "Your Honor, this woman is lying, Victor and I are a legal couple." The judge glanced at Kara unhappily and said, "Please listen to the plaintiff first, and you will have a chance to speak later." Kara glanced at me indignantly and closed her mouth. "In the past 10 years, I have sacrificed my career as a housewife for my family, and I have not received the recognition of the value I deserve. Victor deceived me into signing a divorce agreement on the grounds of the bankruptcy of the company. Let me leave the house. I want to pursue the defendant's mental damage to me and the housewife's financial compensation." And I asked the defendant Kara to return a total of 898,000 yuan to the joint property of the husband and wife. The judge glanced at Kara at this time and asked, "Defendant, do you have anything to say?" "Yes. Yes." Kara looked proud and said eagerly, "The money was paid to me by Victor for the purchase, and the notes were written." I looked at her and shook her head, and asked, "You said yes, where is the purchase contract? Where is the invoice? Why is it not a public account payment, but a private transfer to you?" Kara was speechless when I asked her, and looked at Victor for help. Victor slowly spat out 2 words under the gaze of everyone: "Tax avoidance." Ha ha ha, I laughed in my heart. This person really didn't know that he was dying. The judge also looked at him very speechlessly, and then said, "Defendant, if you have no evidence to prove it, then it is a free gift, and the other spouse has the right to recover any transfer during the marriage." Kara was dumbfounded. I've spent it all," she cried and said. "That's your problem. Now, I'm your creditor, and you have 3 days to pay it back." Thanks to the blessings of those 2 silly hats, the lawsuit was fought without suspense, and I walked out of the courtroom proudly. Kara followed up and said to me with an unconvinced face, "Julia, don't be proud, it's just more than 800,000, even if you want 1 million, I'm not afraid, You certainly don't know." As if realizing that she was talking fast for a while, she stopped and looked at me with a proud face, her eyes revealing contempt. Victor stepped forward and pulled her away, fearing that I would find out some secret. "Hey, stop." I walked up to them and gave Kara a hard sip. Bad luck. When Kara jumped in anger, I opened the car door and got inside. After my house was renovated, Victor downstairs also hired a renovation company. At 8 a.m., I was woken up by an electric drill from my sleep on time. As I went downstairs, Victor took Kara's hand and looked at me with a proud face. "Husband, let's redesign the house, the previous decoration, old-fashioned, I don't know who it is, so tasteless." Kara put her mouth to Victor, but her eyes were looking at me. I thought she had farted. "It costs a lot of money to decorate, isn't your company just bankrupt?" I asked with concern. Victor's face changed, and then he became fierce. "What does it have to do with you?" I smiled and replied, "It's really none of my business." I took 2 photos of the house that was being renovated and took the elevator downstairs. I found a secluded place, followed the list, and started calling one by one. It took a full 2 hours, and my phone ran out of power, and I finished making those 16 calls. Early the next morning, I finally stopped hearing the noise like magic sounds. Instead, there was a fierce quarrel. When I went downstairs, there were densely packed people on the 3 floors outside the door. I faintly heard someone inside shouting, "Victor, you have money to decorate the house, but you don't have money to pay your salary?" The big guys went together, and the unscrupulous boss deducted our hard-earned money, and we fought with them. After a while, there was the sound of things being broken, as well as the screams of women. I hugged my chest and watched the excitement with everyone, and after a while, I don't know who shouted, "The police are coming," and I saw 2 uniformed policemen coming out of the elevator. After a while, the police took Victor out, and when I saw Victor, I laughed. He was wearing pajamas, big pants, a large red and swollen forehead, and a look of embarrassment. He heard the laughter, looked back and saw that it was me, and said viciously, "It's you again, Julia, are you still a person?" The 2 policemen turned to look at me together, and I hurriedly said, "I am a good law-abiding citizen." I recognized it was the police officer who came to deal with Victor's noise complaint last time. Behind Victor, dozens of menacing men and women were wearing uniform white t-shirts with a few big red characters printed in the middle of the t-shirt, "Victor pays back." I know a person who is ahead of me, named Uncle Mark, who is a veteran employee of Victor and has been with us since the beginning of the business. That's right, it's us, Victor. In the early days of the business, I took out all my savings to support him. He gave me 20% of the shares. But later, when the company was on the right track, he returned the part of my capital to me and asked me to transfer the shares to him, so that he was the largest shareholder of the company, and I, of course, also became a housewife. I once read a sentence on the internet that husband and wife can share hardships, but they cannot share joys and sorrows. Isn't that the case? Victor was sued for unpaid wages. It seems that he used that trick to deceive many people, including me, of course. 24 hours later, Victor returned with a dejected face. He didn't go home, but came to my house and started smashing the door. Mine is a top-quality stainless steel security door. He loves to smash it, just let him do it. As for me, I had already arrived at a 5-star hotel a few kilometers away, and of course I wouldn't be waiting for him at home. I watched Victor go crazy on the surveillance while enjoying the buffet of 1,000 per person, not to mention how comfortable it was. When he was almost in trouble, I called the property and said that someone was maliciously damaging my private property and asked them to take care of it. After 3 minutes, Victor was kindly asked to leave by the property. After a while, my phone rang. When I saw the call alert, I turned off the phone directly. I can't let people with bad appetites affect my eating. After eating, I turned on the phone, found a phone in the address book, and dialed it. Hey, Mr. Richard, hello, do you remember me? Yes, it's me, you have a good memory. That's right, there's one thing I want to tell you. Yes, you know that too. Ah, did he say that? I have something here. I have seen it with a friend from an accounting firm, and I think you should need it. Okay, I'll send it to you now. I looked at the set of data in the photo, zoomed in and took a look, and then I sent it to Mr. Richard. After doing all this, I signed up for a tour group and went abroad for a week. When I got home, I actually saw my son, whom I hadn't seen for a long time. He lost weight and looked at me timidly. Mom. Don't call me that, I can't afford it. Mom, Dad sold the house and I'm homeless, can I come back to you? The son begged. I couldn't help but laugh at myself. My son had never been so careful in front of me. He always said that I was too strong, he was too strict with him, so that he had no freedom. He has never been cold to me, never cautious. I didn't make a sound. He continued, Mom, no matter what happens to you and Dad, I was born to you after all. Yes, I regret it now, it's better not to give birth to you. Jason's face became ugly, and he choked up, Mom, are you going to cut ties with me? I think so, but the law doesn't allow it. Mom. Kara is your mother, she doesn't care about you, she doesn't force you, you have more topics to talk about, you go to her. My son cried, and my heart ached. Victor sold the house to cover the employees' unpaid wages and compensation. And things are far from over. Mr. Richard moved faster than I expected. He is one of Victor's suppliers. We have been working with him for more than 10 years. I revealed the flaws in Victor's bankruptcy application to him. He is also an old man. Of course he can see through it at a glance. He told me that Victor still owed him hundreds of thousands of dollars, which he had been dragged on due to bankruptcy. He asked me if there was a list of other vendors. I sent it to him generously. They then sued Victor as creditors for false bankruptcy of the company. They want Victor to spit out all the food he ate. I'm looking forward to seeing Victor lose the case and go crazy in court. On the day of the trial, I appeared in exquisite makeup, wearing big-name professional clothes, and stepping on the high of hatred. Since I don't have to take care of my son at home and serve my husband, I have more time, do beauty spas, sleep beauty, my skin is delicate and fair, plus I signed up for a body management course, and I lost 10 pounds in a month. Now I can be said to have undergone a reborn change. Victor's eyes never took their eyes off me until Kara pinched him hard. We prosecute Victor for false bankruptcy, forgery of official seals, fictitious debts, and concealment of property, which seriously harmed the interests of creditors and others, and asked the judge to investigate strictly. Before Victor could speak, Kara excitedly waved a piece of paper in her hand. Your Honor, we are really bankrupt. The judge at the table slammed the gavel, and Kara pretended not to hear it, yelling in the quiet and solemn courtroom. In the end, the judge sternly warned her that if she made any noise, she would be expelled from the courtroom, which was honest. I looked at her like a fool. This woman only had a long face, not a brain. At this time, the lawyer beside Victor said slowly, "Judge, this is the bankruptcy application of my client company." The lawyer respectfully handed over the information, and the judge lowered his head to read it. "Plaintiff, what evidence do you have to prove your statement?" Hearing this, Mr. Richard's lawyer immediately stood up. "Judge, this is the financial statement provided by the defendant company to the bank. There are many doubts on it, we have sorted it out, please take a look." After reading it, the judge nodded and asked, "Defendant, do you have any explanation?" Victor handed over a thick stack of invoices. Soon, the judge asked the question, "Are these invoices all paid by Whitmore Capital Group?" Victor replied, "Yes." As soon as I heard this name, I felt a big alarm in my heart, and I lowered my head and said a few words to the lawyer. "This company was established half a year ago, and the defendant company has been in operation for 15 years, and a company that has only been established for half a year has a lot of business dealings with a company that has been around for 15 years. Judge, may you ask the defendant to explain the reasons?" Attorney Ryan said slowly, and I saw Victor's face look bad. Before Victor could speak, Kara on the side couldn't sit still and said loudly, "We like it, we want you to take care of it." I rolled my eyes. In the next second, Victor covered her mouth and glared at her. The judge gave Kara a second warning. Kara pouted, her expression extremely aggrieved. Then we provided new evidence. Half a year ago, Victor set up a private account abroad, and every half-month, 5-figure funds were transferred to this account. If Victor is losing money, where does the money come from? The judge flipped through the information and asked, "Defendant, do you have anything to say?" Victor had an idea and replied, "This is the money for my son's study abroad." "If it is funds for children to study abroad, why do you want to go to the public account, falsely invoice it, and include it in the balance sheet of the enterprise? How can this be explained?" Victor was speechless by a series of questions. He anxiously glanced at the lawyer beside him, who was sweating profusely and was overwhelmed. We glanced at Victor and threw the last bomb. A month ago, the defendant resold the company's assets at a low price to Whitmore Capital Group, whose legal representative was Dylan. Your Honor, after our visit, it has been confirmed that Dylan has an extraordinary relationship with the defendant's current wife. After saying that, the lawyer handed over a stack of photocopied photos and materials. Victor glanced at Kara in disbelief and asked, "Isn't he your cousin?" As soon as these words came out, even the judge was shocked. The judge pronounced the verdict on the spot. Defendant Victor committed the crime of false bankruptcy, seriously harmed the rights and interests of creditors, and was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison, suspended for 1 year, and fined 200,000 yuan. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Richard shook my hand cordially. Victor rushed over and knelt directly on Mr. in front of Richard. "Mr. Richard, can you give me another chance?" Mr. Richard glanced at him contemptuously, snorted coldly, and turned to leave. Victor turned his head and cursed at me, "Julia, you idiot, you don't have a good death, you poisonous woman, my money will not belong to your son in the future, you will be happy to see me in jail." I curled the corners of my mouth and said, "Yes, I'm happy to see you go to jail. I'm so happy to die." All of Victor's account funds have been frozen, and the money he wanted to transfer now can't get a penny back. Victor's face was ashen, and when he turned his head, he suddenly found that Kara had disappeared at some point. "Did you see Kara?" he asked the lawyer. The lawyer shook his head. Then Victor took out his mobile phone and made a call. I hit it several times in a row, and it is estimated that it is all turned off. He became irritable and kicked the ground hard with his foot. "Hey, let me give you some hints." I turned on my phone and showed him a video. His face was extremely angry, and he began to curse Kara, then quickly ran in the direction of the car, and then drove away at an astonishing speed. I looked at the video and saw a clip of Kara having an affair with a man. As for the man, of course Victor knew, it was her cousin Dylan. I knew Victor was going to finish. A sense of pleasure rose in my heart, and today is really suitable for a big meal. I made an appointment with my senior and told him the results of the trial. He sighed. Victor is a very capable person, otherwise he would not have come to this day from scratch. But men, as soon as they have money, they become bad and their hearts are dirty. When I was investigating Whitmore Capital Group, I noticed something was wrong with Dylan, a gangster who graduated from high school, who gave him the courage. Naturally, it was Kara. He and Kara were childhood sweethearts, and they grew up with bare buttocks. The two caught Victor, a big fish, so they had to work hard. When Victor proposed that he wanted to transfer the company's property through bankruptcy and needed to open another company, Kara immediately thought of his cousin Dylan. Dylan has been in society for many years, and he does things smoothly, so that Victor doesn't find any flaws. Initially, I found out on Kara's social account that the two were tricky. Sure enough, women's intuition is extremely accurate when it comes to men and women. How will Victor, who has been betrayed, be angry and take revenge on Kara? I'll wait and see. It didn't take long for me to get a call from the police. It turned out that Victor had jumped off the building, no one died, and was rescued in the hospital. Since he had no other close friends in the city, he could only call my ex-wife. Julia? Does Victor know you? I nodded and replied, it's my ex-husband. Then do you know Kara and Dylan? Kara knows me, it's my ex-husband's current one. Well, there are some situations that need to be understood by you, please come to the hospital. Okay. When I came to the hospital, I found out that the person who called me turned out to be a policeman. We received a 110 call saying there was a fight, and when we arrived, Victor and Dylan happened to jump from upstairs together. Kara lay unconscious. Kara just woke up, the doctor operated on her, and she just finished taking notes. What's wrong with her? What happened? I asked. She had a miscarriage. After waking up, she said that Victor had beaten her and caused the miscarriage. What about Victor? Victor is now in the ICU, and doctors say he is likely to be paraplegic. Mr. Police, what do you want to know? I must know everything. The police then asked me a lot of questions, asked me if I knew Victor, Kara, and Dylan's relationship, and asked me why they had an argument. After taking notes, when I left the hospital, it was already 2 a.m. The hospital was still brightly lit, a 120 roared in the distance, and a doctor in the emergency room quickly passed by me, and I hurriedly gave way. Looking at this scene, my heart suddenly became heavy. I came home groggy, washed up randomly, and fell asleep. The next day, I was woken up by the doorbell. The property stood at the door, and Jason was standing beside him. When he saw me, he cried with a wow. Mom, Dad, he dash. Come in. I opened the door to let him in. He was carrying a school bag, and after entering, he looked around with his big eyes open, and he had long forgotten to cry. I already know about your dad, and that's his own fault. After listening to my words, my son nodded along. Mom, I only now know that everything you did before was for my own good, or for my mother's good. It's too late to understand now. From Jason's mouth, I knew Dylan was dead. That day, Victor left angrily and came to Whitmore Capital Group. It's just that the place is already empty, and after Victor gets into a lawsuit, Dylan begins to prepare to escape with the money. With Kara's cooperation, the two quickly prepared. On the day the lawsuit was lost, Kara used the excuse of going to the bathroom and did not come back after going out, but went to join Dylan. The two hid on an abandoned construction site, but they were still found by Victor. After all, the two of them had all of Victor's savings in his life. Victor saw Kara at a glance, and his anger made him lose his mind, and he caught Kara and punched and kicked her, beating Kara until she had a miscarriage. Seeing blood flowing down her legs, Kara screamed miserably and fainted. Hearing the sound, Dylan came out, saw Kara's tragic situation, and scuffled with Victor. In the end, both of them fell from the building. Dylan died instantly. Victor was lucky that he fell on the scaffold when he fell from the building, and he was cushioned and did not die, but he fell into high paraplegia. A week later, I went to the hospital to see Victor. In just 2 months, he seemed to be a teenager, and his eyes were numb and empty. When he saw me, he gritted his teeth and looked angry as if he was going to eat me. I looked at Victor lying on the bed, with only his head moving, and felt a hint of pity in my heart. "Julia, you still have the face. If it weren't for you, I would end up like this today?" I laughed. "I've never seen a brazen person like you, obviously doing something wrong, but putting the blame on others." Victor was so angry that he could only stare at me with his eyes. I laughed and decided to give him another blow. "You know what? Dylan died." Looking at his surprised expression, I added, "Kara sued you." These words made Victor furious. The corners of his eyes were blue, his eyes were red, and it was clear that the name evoked his painful memories. "That bitch. Why should she? Just because you beat her up and killed Dylan." He made a ho-ho sound in his throat and said with a hideous expression, "I should have killed her together, the dog man and woman. For the sake of our husband and wife's relationship, I will hire a good lawyer for you." After saying that, I turned around and went out. Victor's cursing voice came from behind him. Kara took Victor to court in vain. Finally, Victor was sentenced to 11 years in prison for violent assault and intentional injury causing death. Hearing the verdict, Victor seemed extremely excited, expressing his dissatisfaction with the appeal, glaring at the judge with indignation, and spitting at the judge. And was additionally charged with disturbing the order of the court. The doctor on the side stepped forward and gave him a sedative, and he calmed down. Due to Victor's health, this situation is not suitable for him to stay in prison, and he applied for a temporary execution outside of prison. He returned to the hospital, and his range of activities was limited to the ward, which was no different from going to jail. Now his only relative is Jason, and his 16-year-old son has to take care of his paralyzed father while studying. I don't feel sorry for him at all, it's his own choice. When I saw Victor again, I came to his ward with the company acquisition contract, accompanied by a lawyer. When Victor saw me, he didn't even have the strength to stare at me. After listening to the lawyer's statement, he said with a dead heart, "Are you satisfied now?" I nodded, "It's okay. Victor's company also has my share, and the old customers who cooperated with me also expressed their willingness to continue to cooperate, and after 10 years of being a housewife, it is time for me to be reborn. From now on, I am no longer Jason's mother, I have my own name, my name is Julia. I have my own company, I am my own boss." I helped Victor pay off all the creditors' arrears and got the ownership of the company, and from now on, the company will be me. Just as I was about to go out, Victor suddenly said loudly, "Julia, where did you get so much money? You are so scheming, take my money to buy my company." I smiled faintly, took out the lottery ticket that made me win the jackpot, and shook it in front of Victor's eyes. "Victor, don't think of everyone as dirty as you. Do you know? When you were traveling abroad with Kara, I was looking for ways to help you pay off your debts everywhere in the country, and I took the remaining 5,000 yuan to buy lottery tickets. God have mercy, I really won the jackpot. I wanted to tell you the good news for the first time, but I found out that you deceived me. You know how I felt at the time." I finished speaking, and when I looked at Victor, his face was pale and incredulous. "Of course you know that you have tasted the feeling of being betrayed by the person closest to you." I looked at him proudly, feeling extremely happy in my chest. "I also want to thank you for letting me see your true face earlier." Victor on the hospital bed glared at me with squinted eyes. "Haha, I like the way you can't get used to me and can't kill me." Soon after, I heard that Jason had dropped out of school. Without my supervision, coupled with his lack of love for studying, his grades plummeted, and he finally dropped out of school. His peers are still studying, and he is already working everywhere. I approached him and said he was willing to continue to pay for his school tuition and living expenses. He refused. He began to work part-time while taking care of Victor. I choose to respect. My daily life is busy and fulfilling, and I put all my time and energy into my work. After a few months, the company was gradually on the right track, and I began to intentionally cultivate successors. From then on, the sea and sky were wide and I was allowed to fly.